Rope bit into frozen wrists. A woman lay face down in the snow, arms bound behind her back, legs tied at the ankles. She wasn't moving. Blood had dried in a dark line from her temple to her jaw, pressed tight against her ribs. A small puppy shivered and whimpered. It hadn't left her side. Snow was falling hard, already starting to cover them both. Another hour, maybe two, and nobody would have found them. That's when the convoy stopped. The lead vehicle killed its engine. A door swung open. The man who stepped out didn't rush. He moved with the kind of size and weight that makes the ground feel it. His name was Kael Voss, Alpha King of the Northern Dominion, the most feared shifter alive. What he did next, what he set into motion that night, it changed everything that followed. Stay with me on this one. Now here's the thing about Kael Voss. He wasn't the kind of alpha who sat on a throne and gave orders from a distance. He was the kind who led every patrol himself, drove the front vehicle, walked the perimeter of his territory with his own boots in the dirt. He'd held the Northern Dominion for 11 years, and in that time, not a single rival pack had gained so much as a mile of ground. Some alphas rule because of bloodline. Kael ruled because everyone who'd ever challenged him had ended up on their back, staring at the sky, wondering what hit them. He had a reputation, not the kind you build with stories, the kind you build with results. Other pack leaders talked about him the way soldiers talk about a general they hope they never have to face. He didn't posture. He didn't make threats he wasn't prepared to follow through on. When Kael said something was going to happen, it happened. That was the beginning and the end of it. He was traveling north that night. Deep winter, the kind of cold that doesn't just bite. Settles into your bones and stays there. His convoy was 3 vehicles moving through a mountain pass, heading toward a summit meeting with 2 other pack leaders. Border disputes, territory lines, the kind of politics that bored Kael but kept people alive. His beta, a man named Dren, rode in the second vehicle. Dren had been with him for 9 years, fought beside him in 2 territory wars. He was the only wolf in the Dominion who could disagree with Kael to his face and walk away with all his teeth. The rest of the convoy was security. 8 wolves total. Kael almost missed her. The headlights caught something off the trail, a shape in the snow that didn't belong. He told the driver to stop, stepped out into the wind, walked about 40 yards off the road, boots crunching through a foot of fresh powder. And that's when he saw her. She was half buried, face down. Her coat was thin, wrong for the weather, wrong for survival. Her hands were tied behind her back with a rough cord that had cut into her skin so deep it had drawn blood before the cold froze it shut. Her legs were bound the same way. Whoever did this hadn't been in a hurry. They'd taken their time, made sure she wasn't going anywhere. The knots were tight and deliberate, military style. Someone trained had done this. The puppy saw him first. It lifted its head from against her side and let out a low, shaking growl. Tiny thing. Couldn't have been more than a few months old. Gray and white, matted fur. But it bared its teeth at Kael like it was ready to take on a wolf 10 times its size. Believe me, that mattered later. Kael crouched down. He didn't touch her. Not yet. He could hear her heartbeat. Faint. Slow. Too slow. She was alive, but barely. He pulled the cord from her wrists first, then her ankles. The skin underneath was raw and purple. He slid his coat off and laid it over her, lifted her out of the snow. She weighed nothing. That's what hit him first. She weighed nothing at all. Then something else hit him. Came on like a crack in the chest, like something splitting open behind his ribs. His wolf surged forward. Not in aggression, not in defense, in recognition. Every shifter knows the stories. Every alpha is told about it from the time they're old enough to understand. The mate bond, the pull that can't be faked, can't be earned, can't be chosen. It just is. And right now, holding this half-dead woman in his arms, Kael felt it lock into place like a bolt sliding home. His fated mate. Bound. beaten, left to die in the snow. He carried her to the lead vehicle. The puppy followed. It didn't need to be called. It scrambled through the snow behind him, tripping over itself, but it kept up. Cale laid her across the back seat. The puppy jumped in after and pressed itself against her stomach. Dren appeared at the door. "Who is she?" Dren asked. "Mine," Cale said. That was the only word he gave. The summit meeting was forgotten. All three vehicles turned around. Top speed. Every mile felt too slow. Cale sat beside her, one hand on the side of her neck, monitoring her pulse. Her heartbeat was still fading. Her lips had turned a shade of blue that meant they didn't have long. They reached the compound in under an hour. Cale carried her inside himself, past the guards, past the pack members who stared and didn't dare speak, straight to the medical wing. He set her on the table and told the healers to work. Now, the next 3 hours were the longest of his life. They warmed her core, treated the frostbite on her fingers and toes, cleaned the gash on her temple, stitched a cut on her shoulder he hadn't seen under the blood, set a fractured wrist that someone had snapped like they were breaking a stick. And through all of it, the puppy sat at the foot of the table. Wouldn't move, wouldn't eat, just watched. Its eyes never left her face. Not once. When the lead healer came out, her face was tight. "She'll live," the healer said. But whoever did this, they did a lot more than leave her in the snow. Cale said nothing. He already knew. There were older injuries, burns on her forearms, scars across her back that told a story of months, maybe years of abuse, a mark on her left shoulder blade that made the healer go quiet. It was a brand, pack brand, burned into her skin with something hot and held there long enough to scar permanently. It didn't belong to the Northern Dominion. It belonged to the Ashfall Pack. Now the Ashfall Pack was run by an alpha named Torin Hale. And if that name doesn't mean anything to you yet, it will. Torin was the kind of alpha who didn't just lead his pack. He owned them. Every member, every wolf under his control lived in fear. He'd taken the Ashfall territory by force 8 years ago, killed the previous alpha in front of the entire pack, and ruled through violence ever since. The wolves who survived the takeover learned one rule fast: obey or disappear. He was known for one thing above all. He didn't let people leave. Anyone who tried to run from Ashfall was hunted down, punished, and brought back. Or they weren't brought back at all. This woman had run, and she'd been caught, bound, and thrown into the snow to die slow. Cale sat in the chair beside her bed and waited. The puppy slept curled against her hip. Hours passed. The fire crackled. The compound went quiet. Nobody came to the door. Nobody knocked. The whole pack knew to stay away. Just before dawn, she opened her eyes. She didn't scream. That told Cale more than any word could have. People who scream when they wake up afraid. Those are people who still believe screaming might help. This woman opened her eyes, saw a man she didn't know sitting 2 feet away, and went completely still. She froze like an animal that knows running will only make it worse. "You're safe," Cale said. She didn't believe him. Her eyes moved around the room. Exits, windows, walls, calculating. Every muscle in her body was tense. The puppy lifted its head and licked her hand, and that was the only thing that made her breathe. "My name is Cale," he said. "You're in the Northern Dominion. I found you on the mountain pass. Nobody here is going to hurt you." She still didn't speak. Her eyes landed on his and stayed there. And for the first time in his life, Cale Voss didn't know what to say next. He was a man who commanded armies, who settled territory disputes with a look, who had never once hesitated in front of an enemy. But this woman, this thin, broken, silent woman, looking at him from a bed with the kind of eyes that had already seen the worst the world could offer, she made him feel like every word he chose was wrong. "What's your name?" he asked. She swallowed. Her voice, when it came, was barely a whisper. "Sarah." Over the next few days, Sarah didn't speak much. She answered questions when asked. Short answers. 1 or 2 words. She ate when food was brought. She didn't ask for anything. She didn't complain. She flinched when anyone moved too fast near her. She slept with her hand on the puppy like it was the only anchor she had left. And if someone raised their voice in the hallway outside her room, she'd go rigid and stay that way for minutes. Cale watched from a distance. He didn't crowd her, didn't push. He'd fought wars and won them. But this wasn't a war. This was something that couldn't be forced. So he let her be. He assigned a female healer named Marin to check on her twice a day. Marin was patient and quiet and had a way of asking questions that didn't feel like questions. She was the only person besides the puppy who could get Sarah to relax even a little. A week in, Sarah started to walk the hallways. Just short distances. She'd stand at a window and look at the snow like she was memorizing an escape route. She'd run her fingers along the wall as she walked, feeling the texture of it, grounding herself in a place she didn't yet trust. The puppy was always at her heels. Always. And here's where it gets strange. The puppy was growing fast. Too fast. In a week, it had nearly doubled in size. Its gray and white fur had thickened into something denser, almost metallic. Its eyes had shifted from brown to a pale silver that caught the light and held it. Cale noticed. Dren noticed. The healers noticed. Nobody said it out loud, but they were all thinking the same thing. That wasn't a normal puppy. Then came the morning that changed everything. Sarah was sitting in the courtyard. First time she'd gone outside since she arrived. The sun was out. The snow had stopped falling. She was watching the puppy chase its own tail in the thin winter light, and for the first time, Cale saw her smile. It was small, barely there, but it was real. He was standing at the far end of the courtyard, giving her space, thinking maybe this was going to work. Maybe she was going to heal. Maybe the worst was behind them. It wasn't. A horn blew from the northern gate. 3 long blasts. That meant one thing. Incoming threat. Not a raid. Not a supply run. A delegation. Someone was at the gates and demanding entry. Cale moved fast. He reached the gate in under a minute. His guard captain met him there, breathing hard. Ashfall, the captain said. 6 wolves. One of them is Torin Hale. Now here's where this story stops being a rescue and becomes something else entirely. Because Torin Hale didn't ride 600 miles through winter to make small talk. He came for one reason. He came to take back what he considered his property. He came for Sarah. If you've been following this story, hit that subscribe button and stay close, because what happens next is the reason I'm telling it. Torin walked through the gate like he owned the ground beneath him. He was tall, wide across the shoulders. A scar ran from his right ear down to his jawline, thick and white against dark skin. 6 of his wolves flanked him in formation, and every one of them was armed. Cale met him in the open yard between the gate and the main hall. No cover. No weapons drawn. Cale didn't need them. His hands hung loose at his sides. His posture was relaxed. But his eyes had already changed. Gold at the edges. The wolf was right there. "You have something that belongs to me," Torin said. "I don't have anything of yours," Cale replied. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "The girl," Torin said. "She's Ashfall. She was bound and sentenced by my pack. What happened to her was justice, and you had no right to interfere." Justice. Cale said the word like he was tasting something rotten. She broke pack law, tried to run, took something that didn't belong to her. Torin's eyes shifted toward the main hall. He was looking for her, searching the windows. "I'll take her now and we leave peacefully. Or I come back with 40 wolves and we do this differently." That's when Cale stepped closer. Just one step, but every wolf in the yard felt it. The air changed. Something heavy settled over the space between the 2 alphas. Cale's wolf was fully at the surface now. "She is under my protection," Cale said. "She stays." You leave. And if you ever set foot on my territory again, I will personally end you. Torin didn't flinch, but his wolves did. Two of them shifted their weight backward without meaning to. They knew what Kale was. They'd heard the stories. Torin was a brute, but Kale was something else. Kale was the wolf that other wolves had nightmares about. Torin smiled, slow and cold. This isn't over, Voss. He turned and walked back through the gate. His wolves followed. And just like that, the Northern Dominion was at the edge of a war. But here's the part that nobody saw coming. Not Kale. Not Dren. Not even Sarah herself. The thing Sarah had taken from Ashfall. The thing Torin said didn't belong to her. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't gold. It wasn't territory or secrets. It was the puppy. Marin figured it out first. She'd been running tests, checking the puppy's growth rate against every known breed, monitoring its vitals around the clock. The results didn't make sense for a regular animal. His bone density was off the charts. His heart rate was far too slow for its size. Its neural patterns were wrong for a dog. When Marin brought the results to Kale, she said it in a way that was plain and careful. "That's not a dog," Marin said. "It's a shifter pup, an Omega wolf, and based on its bloodline markers, it's from the original Ashfall line. The bloodline Torin killed off when he took over, which meant the puppy was the last living heir of the original Ashfall pack. Pup too young to shift, too young to defend itself, hidden, protected, smuggled out by the one person willing to die for it. Sarah hadn't run from Ashfall to save herself. She'd run to save the pup. That night, Kale went to her room. She was sitting on the floor with the pup in her lap. It was bigger now, almost the size of a full-grown dog. Its silver eyes tracked Kale as he sat down across from her on the stone floor. "You knew what it was," Kale said. "Not a question." Sarah nodded. "His name is Ren. He's the son of the Alpha Torin murdered. Torin killed every member of the original line. Every child, every elder, every cousin and aunt and uncle who shared that blood. But Ren was hidden. A midwife smuggled him out the night of the massacre and brought him to me." "Why you?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "Because I was nobody. Lowest rank in the pack. The kind of wolf people look through, not at. No one noticed me twice. I kept him hidden for 3 months. Fed him from scraps. Carried him under my coat when I moved through the compound. But Torin found out. He didn't know what Ren was. He just knew I'd taken something and tried to run." She paused. Her hands moved through Ren's thick fur. "He caught me at the border. Tied me up. Left me in the snow. He figured the cold would do the rest and no one would ask questions." Kale didn't move. He sat there, looking at this woman who had endured years of abuse, who had been branded and beaten and treated as less than nothing, who had risked everything not for herself but for a pup that couldn't even shift yet, and the mate bond that had cracked open in his chest on that mountain pass. It didn't just hold. It deepened. It settled into something permanent and unshakable. "Torin is going to come back," Kale said. "I know. He's going to bring everything he has." Sarah met his eyes. No flinch. No fear. "I know that too. Then we prepare." The war came faster than anyone expected. Torin didn't wait for spring. He didn't wait for reinforcements from allied packs. He struck 10 days later, in the dead of night with every wolf he had. 43 fighters hit the Northern Dominion's eastern wall at 2 in the morning. They came in hard and fast, hoping to overwhelm the defenses before anyone could organize a response. But Kale was ready. He'd spent those 10 days fortifying every weak point on the eastern approach, repositioning guards, reinforcing the outer wall with timber and stone, setting traps along the tree line and the mountain trails. He ran drills every morning and every night. His wolves trained in shifted form and in human form. They practiced fighting in snow, fighting in the dark, fighting outnumbered. Kale didn't sleep more than 3 hours a night during that stretch. Neither did Dren. He called in debts from 2 allied packs who owed him favors going back years, adding another 30 wolves to his defense. Those wolves arrived within a week, battle-tested and ready. And he'd done something else. Something that spread through the shifter world like wildfire. He'd sent word to every pack in the region. A message. Simple. Clear. The last heir of the original Ashfall line is alive. Torrhen Hale murdered children to steal his throne. The proof is breathing. That one message changed the war before it started. Because Torrhen's claim to Ashfall had always been built on one thing. There were no surviving heirs. His rule was final, permanent, unchallengeable. But if an heir existed, if a living descendant of the original Alpha was out there, healthy and growing, then Torrhen's claim was illegitimate. His entire pack structure was built on a lie, and every Alpha in the region now knew it. The battle at the Eastern Wall lasted 4 hours. It was brutal and close. Torrhen's wolves fought with the desperation of men who know what happens if they lose. But Chaol's wolves fought for something bigger. They fought because they'd seen Serra. They'd seen the scars. They'd seen the brand. And they'd decided that whatever Ashfall was selling, they weren't buying. Chaol fought at the front line. He didn't delegate. He didn't observe from the rear. He was the first wolf through the breach when Torrhen's fighters broke through the outer gate, and he was the last one standing when it was over. Torrhen made it to the inner courtyard. That's where Chaol was waiting for him. They fought in shifted form. 2 massive wolves, circling each other on frozen ground. Torrhen was bigger, broader. He fought with brute force and raw fury, throwing his full weight into every strike and every lunge. But Chaol was faster, smarter, more controlled. He'd been fighting since he was 14 years old. He knew where a body breaks. He knew how to wait for the right opening and then hit it with everything. The fight lasted 7 minutes. Torrhen got in 2 good hits. A slash across Chaol's ribs that drew blood. A bite that tore into his shoulder and wouldn't let go until Chaol twisted free. But Chaol got in 1 clean strike. 1 was enough. He took Torrhen down by the throat, pinned him to the frozen ground, held him there while Torrhen's remaining wolves watched. Every single one of them. They watched their alpha go still beneath Chaol's jaws. They watched the fight leave his body. Chaol didn't kill him. He could have. Every wolf in that courtyard expected him to. It would have been within his right. But he didn't. He held Torrhen down, shifted back to human form, and spoke loud enough for every wolf present to hear. Your alpha built his pack on the graves of children. That ends tonight. The heir of the original Ashfall line lives. His name is Ren. And when he's old enough to lead, Ashfall will be his. Torrhen was dragged out in chains. His wolves, some of them, dropped to 1 knee. Not for Chaol. For the promise of what was coming. For the idea that maybe the pack they remembered, the one that existed before the massacre, could exist again. The rest of Torrhen's fighters fled into the mountains. They wouldn't get far. It was over. The weeks after the battle were quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after something heavy has finally been set down and you can breathe again. The Northern Dominion began to heal. Walls were repaired. Wounded fighters recovered slowly. The Allied packs went home with Chaol's gratitude and open borders for trade that would last a generation. Serra didn't leave. She didn't talk about leaving. She didn't ask about it. She started walking the grounds not like someone mapping escape routes, but like someone learning where things were because she planned to stay. She ate meals in the main hall instead of alone in her room. She spoke to Merrin without being asked questions first. She started helping in the medical wing, folding bandages, organizing supplies, doing quiet, useful work with steady hands. She even laughed once, at something Dren said that nobody else thought was funny. It was a small laugh, quiet, but Chaol heard it from across the room, and he stopped what he was doing just to listen. The mate bond was still there. It hadn't faded. If anything, it had grown louder with every passing day. But Chaol never pushed it. He never told Serra what she was to him. He figured she'd had enough of men deciding things for her. If the bond was going to mean something real, she'd have to come to it on her own terms. Took 6 weeks. She found him one evening in the study. He was sitting at his desk, going through patrol reports, doing the boring work that keeps a territory running. She knocked on the open door. The puppy, Ren, was at her side. Except Ren wasn't really a puppy anymore. He was the size of a full-grown wolf now, silver-furred and calm-eyed, carrying himself with a quiet dignity that didn't match his age but matched his blood perfectly. "I need to tell you something," Sarah said. Cale set down the reports. "Okay." She stepped into the room. She didn't sit down. She stood in the middle of the floor, arms at her sides, and looked straight at him. "I feel it," she said. "The bond. I felt it since the first night I woke up here. I didn't know what it was at first. I thought it was fear. But it's not fear. It's the opposite of fear." Cale didn't move. "I spent 3 years in Ashfall being told I was nothing," Sarah said. "Being told I didn't matter. Being told I existed only because someone allowed me to exist. And I believed it. I believed all of it. Until I held Ren for the first time and realized that something needed me. Something depended on me being brave enough to run." She took a breath. "You didn't save me, Cale. The cold almost killed me, and you carried me out of the snow. I'll never forget that. But you didn't save me. I saved myself the moment I decided to run. What you did, what you've done every single day since, is you gave me a place where running wasn't necessary anymore." Cale stood up. He walked around the desk. He stopped in front of her, close enough to touch. But he didn't. "Not yet. I'm not going to tell you what to feel," he said. "I'm not going to claim you or mark you or make you anything you don't choose to be. But I need you to know, you are the only thing in this world that has ever made me stop." Sarah reached out. Her hand found the side of his face. Her fingers were still scarred at the knuckles from the rope that had bound her in the snow. She held his jaw the way someone holds something they've been afraid to break. "Then stop," she said. He did. Ren grew into his role the way fire grows from a single coal. Slowly at first, then with a heat you can't ignore. Cale brought in trainers, teachers, elders from packs that remembered the original Ashfall line and were willing to pass on what they knew. By the time Ren was old enough to shift into his full wolf form, he did it with a kind of grace that made the older wolves go quiet. He was silver-furred in both forms. Tall, lean, calm in a way that Torin never was and never could have been. The kind of calm that doesn't come from never being tested. It comes from being tested early, tested hard, and surviving. Sarah watched all of it. She stood at the edge of the training yard with her arms crossed and her chin up, and she watched the pup she had carried under her coat through 3 months of terror become something no one could ignore, something no one could deny. She had come into the Northern Dominion with nothing. Bound, frozen, nameless. She'd been thrown away by the world and left for dead. And now she stood beside the most powerful alpha alive, not because he had rescued her, but because she had rescued something worth protecting, and the world had finally caught up to her courage. Cale never forgot the moment he found her in the snow. He thought about it on quiet nights when the compound was still and the fires burned low. Not with sadness, with clarity, because that was the night everything changed. Not just for her, not just for Ren, for him. He had been a king before that night, feared, respected, obeyed. He had everything a wolf could want except the one thing that actually matters. He hadn't been whole. He was now. The Northern Dominion stood strong through every winter that followed. Ashfall was rebuilt under Ren's name. The old ways restored, the survivors returning one by one to a home they thought was gone forever. Some of them had been in hiding for years. Some had fled to other territories and lived under false names. But they came back. They came back because the word had spread. The air lives. Ashfall is Ashfall again. Sarah became known not as the woman who was rescued, but as the one who had defied an entire pack to save a child who couldn't save himself. People told her story in other territories, other packs. It traveled the way truth does when it's powerful enough. Not through announcements, through whispers, through one wolf telling another, late at night. Let me tell you what happened in the Northern Dominion. The pup in the snow became a legend, and the rope that had bound her wrists. Cale kept it. He hung it on the wall of his study, behind his desk, where he could see it every day. Not as a reminder of what had been done to her, as a reminder of what she had survived, of what she had chosen to do when the world gave her every reason to give up. And the puppy that had growled at an alpha king from the side of a frozen woman on a mountain pass. He became exactly what he was always meant to be. He became the thing that Sarah had almost died to protect. He became proof that one act of courage, from someone the world had called nothing, can change everything. That's the story. That's all of it. And if it broke you a little, good. It was supposed to.